Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If I could get everybody's attention, please. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming our webcast viewers. Nos téléspectateurs, merci de vous joindre à nous aujourd'hui. My name is Jillian Riley, and I'm honored to be the president of the Canadian Club and your host for today. Viewers, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Our club continues to offer a forum for leaders, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas with us. Not only do we encourage a diversity of options, we work hard to reflect the rich diversity of our great country and city. Here, we offer access to dynamic political, business, and public figures. The Mayor of Toronto is such a figure. Before I formally introduce him, here's a quick snapshot of upcoming events. On Thursday, November 30th, Mr. Andrew Scheer, leader of the official opposition and leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, will be at our podium. And on Wednesday, December 13th, we will have Andrew Scheer. Sorry. And on December 13th, we have a panel for Come From Away, and please join us then. Andrew Scheer is on November 30th, this Thursday. You can also join the conversation via Twitter and Instagram by following us at CDNCLUBTO or by using that hashtag. I want to express a special thanks to today's event sponsor, Carpenter's District Council of Ontario, represented by Nikki Holland. Thank you very much for your generous support. I also want to acknowledge the youth and young leaders who are with us today from the Rotman School of Management, sponsored by Bell Canada, and the York School, sponsored by Julie DiLorenzo. If you could please stand so we can acknowledge you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. And now, our guest speaker. Canada's largest, most economically powerful city is home to 2.8 million. Signs of its growth and development surround us. Towering skyscrapers in various stages of development, urban sprawl across the GTA, and traffic gridlock on our roadways. Toronto's 65th mayor has been on the job for 3 years. I think we are well aware of Mayor John Tory's stance on the city's key challenges. He doesn't shy away from an opportunity to discuss his efforts to tackle our transit and traffic woes. Witness to this, the recent initiatives to make commuting around town less arduous. Toronto born and bred, his worship has devoted his time to championing causes that strengthen this world-class city. He has successfully advocated for much-needed funding for transit and housing from the federal government. Advocacy is obviously something that comes naturally to our Toronto mayor, whether as a lawyer early in his career, as a principal secretary to an Ontario premier, or leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, and leader of the official opposition at the Legislative Assembly in Ontario. His worship has also been widely recognized for his deep community service. This includes a diverse range of associations and organizations, including the Canadian Football League, he's obviously a very happy man today, St. Michael's Hospital, the Canadian Paraplegic Association, Crime Stoppers, and the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund, LEAF. One of the many accolades and awards that Mayor Tory has received is the Order of Ontario for being a consummate champion for the Greater Toronto region. Mayor Tory, the Canadian Club of Toronto's podium is yours.
Well, Jill and ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Jill, for that very kind introduction. And I should say at the outset, if I can, that I'm delighted to be here in the presence of so many of my colleagues from Toronto City Council, and I want to just name them and ask if they would stand up and be identified, starting with Councillor Gary Crawford. He is the Budget Chief for the City of Toronto. He was previously introduced, but this is a job that you wouldn't want to take on lightly because it's a tough job. We have a requirement at the city, legislative requirement, that I don't think is a bad thing at all, that we have to produce a balanced budget. And so to him falls the task of leading in that exercise, and I thank him very much for all of his efforts. We also have with us Councillor Justin DiCiano, Councillor John Burnside, and Justin, I don't know where you are in the room. There you are, right there. Thank you. Councillor John Burnside. Councillor Mary Margaret McMahon. Where is Mary Margaret? There she is. Deputy Mayor Glenda Bearmaker. Deputy Mayor Stephen Holliday. Right there. Deputy Mayor Anna Bailau. And Councillor and TTC Chair Josh Cole. Where is Josh? Josh is wherever he is. Now, it's appropriate for me to be up here and offer some congratulations on the day. First of all, of course, to Prince Harry and to Meghan Markle, because this came as a big news, and of course it has its Toronto connection. I had the privilege, as some of you I'm sure did as well, to be in the presence of Prince Harry when he was here during the run-up to the Invictus Games and also at the Games themselves, and he's a very down-to-earth person who, I think is doing sort of the royal family thing in a new way that I think is going to serve that important institution very well. And Miss Markle, who I've not met but who I've talked to on the telephone, has great affection for Toronto, and I think that's going to make another connection between the royal family and Toronto that I think is all good. So I'm sure that we all extend our congratulations to them on their engagement announced this morning. And that brings me, of course, then to the Toronto Argonauts, who I want to extend on behalf of the City Council and all the people of Toronto our congratulations to them. And it's customary to extend congratulations to the players and to the coaches. That was done last night. I did that last night, and I'll do it again tomorrow. But I also want to just say that they had new owners who have been people that have made, it's really Larry Tannenbaum and the Bell group of companies, and they've made a very significant investment in rebuilding an organization that has been a proud representative of the city for a long, long time, more than 100 years. And I think they deserve a lot of credit too, because they're sort of hanging in there, and you know what it's like, a lot of you in this room, to rebuild a business, and that's essentially what they're doing. Now, I had a bet on, of course, with the Mayor of Calgary about the game, and as we were watching the exciting finish to that game, I was thinking possibly about ways in which I might have to start off wearing a Calgary Stampeders jersey and then take it off in front of the City Council to leave an Argos jersey underneath, but it didn't turn out that way. So now he has informed me this morning that he has an Argo jersey. I needn't send him one, which he's going to wear at their City Council. He's going to send me some Calgary craft beer, which I'm not sure is quite as good as ours, but it'll probably be okay. And then I get to send him a poem, and we have the draft here, and I'm not going to read it because I haven't really looked at it in detail yet, and he has to read this poem in front of the City Council. But just to give you a taste of what we're sending him, two of the lines read as follows. Line number 1, the end of the first verse: Toronto, Canada's largest city, my God, I love you. The second line of the second verse: I can only gaze longingly to the east at Canada's greatest metropolis and wish I was there. So you get the general flavor of what we'll be sending along to Mayor Nenshi, and we will take it from there. I should tell you what a pleasure it is for me to be here as we approach that most magical time of the year. And of course, that is the City of Toronto's budget season. People all over town are just thinking about that, thinking warm thoughts about the budget season. But what we do here at this time of year is we hear people very aggressively say that the city is spending too much, and we hear another group of people say with equal voice that the city isn't spending enough. Toronto is a city that has historically lurched between these 2 points of view, alternating between periods when the size and spending of government grew very rapidly and periods where programs were slashed, vital services were cancelled, and all investments, pretty well without exception, were seen as waste. I took office almost exactly 3 years ago, when the 2 previous administrations had effectively cancelled each other out. The city was increasingly polarized, and much time had been lost on important work because of that polarization. And I knew that a different approach was required. In fact, I offered myself for the office on the basis that a different approach would be brought to the task. And as we approach next year's election, and I think, again, it's another good thing that goes with balanced budget legislation, is that people in public life are held to account on a regular basis, every 4 years in this case. As we approach the election, as we prepare to launch the final budget process of this term, I want to talk about the balanced, steady approach that I am focused on taking and that I hope to be able to bring my council colleagues along with me as we approve the budget and other policies going forward. This is who I am when I talk about a balanced and steady approach. You know, I mean, I've said before, I've often been asked at the advent of election campaigns, well, you know, what kind of image are you going to try to portray? And I say, well, it's actually easier just to be yourself, because then you don't have to remember who else it is you're trying to be. But it is in my nature. It is in my nature in every aspect of my career and of my life to try to find a way forward with integrity and with honesty and with a real understanding of the people of this city and of their needs. But it is also, I think, not just who I am, but it is an approach, I think, at this point in our history that is particularly suited to Toronto. I say this because it is undoubtedly true. I say it a lot. Toronto is growing rapidly. You know that to be true. Jill made reference to that in her introduction. We are rapidly, as she said, approaching a population of 3 million people. More than half our residents were born outside of Canada. And that is a blessing, but it presents to us as well some challenges that we have to meet in order to remain the admired city that we are. Our downtown core is intensifying rapidly. When you hear the numbers, and I don't have them written down here and they're not adequately in my head to recite them, but we went from literally hundreds of people living in sections of downtown very close to here to today tens of thousands and soon hundreds of thousands of people living in very relatively confined areas of the downtown. And so that means that our city is also facing increased pressures and increased responsibility to invest intelligently in the transit, in the housing, and other vital services that will set us up, not just for growth, but set us up for prolonged success. We cannot stop our growth. We don't want to. We shouldn't want to. But we don't have unlimited resources to deal with it either, far from it. We can't keep doing things the way we've been doing them all the time, saying yes without limits or no without thought to the future. And that is this back and forth kind of polarization that has gone on historically in the city. Nor can we keep relying on old tools or old ways of thinking in a city that is growing rapidly and is facing, as are all the other cities in the world, rapid change of many different kinds. And so this year's budget, which will launch this week, will reflect that approach. It is based on the belief that we can invest wisely and compassionately, improving people's lives, and also at the same time operate within our means and within the means of the people we serve. For the 4th year in a row, the proposed budget will be keeping the property tax increase to the rate of inflation, as I have committed myself to when I sought this office. This is one of the key ways in which we can try to keep Toronto affordable. But this budget will also see significant investment in the areas that will have a real positive impact on people's lives, including livability and affordability. If I can stop just for a minute on taxes, people often forget that a lot of seniors operate on fixed incomes, fixed modest incomes, and for them one of the biggest checks they write every year is their property tax check to the city. But so is it true now, and many of you in this room probably either yourselves or have children who do a very precise calculation when they buy a home at the very high prices that are often the case in this city now, and go through that precise calculation of their mortgage payment and their taxes, and the taxes are required to be paid at the same time. And so they too are sitting in a position where they can't just say, fine, send me whatever bill you wish, and it's fine with me. So we will keep tax increases on the proposed budget at the rate of inflation. We will also see, however, these significant investments I talked about. So, for example, we will propose through the budget a TTC fare freeze for our city's millions of daily transit riders. The budget will propose investing millions more in the TTC. In fact, an all-time record operating investment by the city in the operations of the TTC, and that system itself will be an expanded system come December 17th, when we will add 6 new subway stations. The budget will propose further investing significantly in the repair of our social housing and prevent the closure of any TCHC, Toronto Community Housing units, from closing permanently. It will hire police officers who will be deployed with a focus on community safety. And for the second year in a row, the police budget itself will remain flatlined, something that had not been achieved before my time in office. This is a direct result, the flatlining of the police budget, of the modernization of our police service, led by Chief Mark Saunders and by the members of the Police Service Board. And in many different respects, it is something that people should take great heart from. So this budget, if approved, will also see us open hundreds of additional shelter beds at a time when we are seeing increased pressure on our system and facing a winter season where we have a moral responsibility to do more, something that will be done. And we can look forward to continuing to invest in these things that I've been mentioning and more, with the advent of $170 million in additional gas tax money from the Government of Ontario that will begin to flow shortly. Make no mistake, that money would not be on the table, would not be flowing to Toronto and all of the other municipalities in the province of Ontario had we not introduced the road tolls that government chose to reject. Of course, budget season means that there will be important choices for our city councillors to make. I have made it clear that I, as the Mayor, will be supporting the introduction of time-based transfers for the TTC. These allow people to hop on and hop off transit within a reasonable time period without having to pay again and again. This will be good for families, this will be good for businesses, and it will increase transit ridership. And just to cite a couple of examples, if you took your kids to school and you used the transit to do so, you would get on the transit. If you got off and just dropped your kids to school, you could get back on the transit without paying a second time. Similarly, if you decided on the way home from work to go and shop for half an hour to pick up some food to have for dinner, you could get off, go to the store, and get back on the transit and find your way home. And of course, it's our wish and our hope that this will increase transit ridership as well as being good for families and being good for businesses. The proposed childcare and housing initiatives that form part of our poverty reduction plan were led, and I had great help from the late Deputy Mayor Pam McConnell in putting those things forward as a comprehensive strategy approved by the City Council for this term in office, and we will continue with that important work and with the investment that goes with it. As our city grows, we must continue to address the growing level of income disparity in this city, and I'm confident that our poverty reduction investments will be supported by the City Council so that we can do more than ever, in fact, to close that gap, including implementing a fair pass, and in this case, fair could be spelled either F-A-R-E or F-A-I-R, because the purpose of the fair pass is to help those who can't necessarily afford to ride the TTC, but who need to do so to connect to employment or to retraining, for example. And this will allow, through the Presto card, for the first time to have lower-income people, those especially on things like disability benefits and so on, to benefit from paying a lower fare so they can seek out opportunity without fear that they'd be precluded from doing so for financial reasons. And the Fair Pass will begin as one of our poverty reduction initiatives in 2018. The budget will propose as well, with my full support, funding which would open 2 new childcare centres with a total of 124 new spaces, and the budget will also propose funding for 825 permanent new childcare subsidies assisted by the Government of Ontario. I will be supporting investments in additional traffic measures aimed at unclogging our streets, including permanent funding for the Quick Clear Squads, which are groups that will go out assigned to the Don Valley Parkway, the Gardiner, and to major arterial roads, and upon being notified of something that is blocking traffic, will go out immediately. They're in effect already, in fact, on the Gardiner Expressway, and go out and clear those things away, because we've discovered that one of the things that blocks traffic up very quickly and for a prolonged period of time would be something as simple as a stalled car sitting for half an hour, or a delivery truck sitting for half an hour, and the effects on traffic can last for hours after that if you don't clear those things away quickly. We will introduce traffic wardens. When I was in New York City a week ago selling Toronto, the first thing I saw when we came off the expressway on the way from the airport were traffic wardens in a green vest, and they're standing at intersections, directing traffic, moving people through, not letting them block the intersection, making sure pedestrians remain safe, but generally bringing a sense of order to those intersections for all those who want to use that public space. And up until now, until the request that I made of Premier Kathleen Wynne, we didn't have permission, legislative permission, to employ people who had the authority to direct traffic and who were not police officers. Because again, part of the task of balancing and flatlining the police budget has been to make better use of highly trained, expensive police officers on things you would expect them to be involved in, and directing traffic or sitting with radar guns is not going to be the best use of their time in a complex city like this. So we're now going to have these traffic wardens. They will be provided for in the proposed budget. And we'll provide as well for something that I was out launching on Friday officially with Councillors Jay Robinson and Kristen Carmichael-Greb, which is for the first time in Toronto, the technology not having been installed by previous administrations, true smart traffic moving technology, which uses a corridor of lights. In this case, there were 10 intersections down Yonge Street up at the near the what you would call North York, and days gone by still do, that actually read the traffic. Using either radar or cameras, read the traffic and adjust the traffic signals based on the actual traffic flow. So it should minimize the kind of instance where you've all sat, as we all have, at a light, and you sit there at a red light and wonder why it is red for you and green for the cross traffic when there are no cars on the cross street. And this technology will help with that, as well as taking account of different things that happen in the movement of traffic. And of course, I will be supporting in this proposed budget the full funding of our Transform TO plan. And this will help us invest in a strong and resilient Toronto, which is so necessary if we are to have a city which does its best to reduce its contribution to climate change. So these are all investments that are possible, but within the context of a budget that does not raise taxes beyond the rate of inflation. Our budget is an important demonstration itself of an approach taken by this administration, a balanced approach for a growing, complex city. As I've said before, I think what we're trying to do, and I think we're succeeding in doing this, is doing the right things in the right way. Along with investments being made by our federal government with a matching provincial contribution, our city is moving forward with our transit network expansion plan. It's a council-approved plan. It's the first time that we've really had one. I think, as you know, in past times, we've done one project at a time, and we've focused on that project, and it's taken us endless numbers of debates and votes and reconsiderations and so on, even to move one project at a time forward. And in fact, that resulted, in some respects, in us taking virtually decades off on the construction of the transit a fast-growing city needed, when in fact an approach should have been to be proceeding on multiple fronts at once, even if it was as simple as to say we should be building a couple of stations or stops of transit every year for the last number of decades. So we now have a comprehensive plan approved by the City Council, that will introduce new transit services across our city, including the Relief Line, including the Eglinton East LRT, which will connect the end of the subway to the University of Toronto Scarborough campus and beyond in future phases, the Scarborough-Bloor-Danforth subway extension, which will connect the centre of Scarborough with its population of 625,000 people to the heavy order rapid transit network of the city, waterfront transit, much needed where all that development I referred to is happening, and Smart Track, which will for the first time use the rails that are commonly thought of as being only to ferry people in and out of the city from outlying parts in the 905 will now be used to a much greater extent to move people inside the 416 from one part of the city to another. And I will tell you that I have taken a personal interest and a personal leadership role in making sure that I can work effectively with the other governments so as to get their financial partnership on these projects. We have secured, since the beginning of this administration, literally billions of dollars in funding for the City of Toronto's transit projects, without which none of these projects would be possible. We needed to create those partnerships with the other governments for Toronto, which I have done. And when I say I have done, I've done it with the help of others. And Anna Bailão in particular, for example, has been very helpful when it's come to housing. but really it has resulted in the relationship that I've tried to forge, where instead of insulting or belittling or acting in any kind of a partisan fashion with those governments, I have sought to sit down with them, when necessary, standing up for Toronto's interests, as you've seen, but by and large dealing with them as partners, that we need to build up the economic engine of this province and of this country. And I believed, and I think that my belief in this has been borne out, that it was in their interests as well to make sure that the economic engine of the province and of the country was strong, and that it had the necessary infrastructure, starting with public transportation, to make sure the city could succeed going forward. And my confidence in spending the time, making the effort to build up those partnerships has been borne out by the fact that they have in most cases come forward with the funding we need. There's still some unfinished business there, but we're working on that on a day-to-day basis. And so I will continue to function in that nonpartisan way that you would expect the Mayor of Toronto to show leadership. And I will say to you that I similarly have adopted a nonpartisan approach in trying to steer clear of the often deliberately induced past polarization that has taken place between different parts of the city. I'm a great believer in the fact that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that what is good for one part of Toronto, and I would even extend that much of the time to the Toronto region, what is good for this region, but in particular what is good for one part of the city, whether it be Scarborough or Etobicoke or North York or East York or the downtown, is going to lift up all of the city in terms of our economic prospects, our social cohesion, and addressing some of the issues that we must address. And first and foremost, when it comes to transportation, I am focused on making sure that we can move people around the city quicker, safely, no matter how they choose to travel. And this takes not just a new approach to transit funding, but it takes a new approach to managing our city streets. And I want to spend just a minute before I conclude talking about the newly introduced King Street Transit pilot project. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing it for one simple reason, and that is to move better the 65,000 people who use the King streetcar each and every day. This is the most traveled surface transit route in North America. And it is a route on which people could quite literally walk faster than they could ride on the streetcar. You will know, as people who've been exposed in one way or another to that street, it wasn't working for anyone. People who did drive cars there would find themselves sitting behind transit vehicles, and they would get irritated by that. People on the streetcars, in much larger number, would find themselves sitting behind a car that was turning left off King Street, and that would aggravate them and lead to a situation where people could walk faster than the streetcar could travel. And so King Street wasn't working. What we have now done is a pilot project, and we are going to measure it 9 ways from Sunday to make sure that we understand what the results are, but it is a pilot project that was smartly designed so that drivers can still access King Street to get to parking garages or to drop someone off at the theatre. It redirects car drivers to parallel routes who want to go on a through destination on Richmond or Adelaide, which have so far absorbed this change without causing much in the way of increased delays, if any. And I know that because we are measuring this initiative differently as well. We are using the best technology to understand the difference this is making from the before and the after for transit riders and for drivers, and we'll be measuring as well the impact in a very sophisticated way on business. I should tell you again, this is something that should have been done a long time ago, but we have installed quite recently Bluetooth technology on most of the major downtown streets, not just the ones affected by the King Street pilot, so that for once and for all, we will be able to measure on an ongoing basis how the traffic flows are on those streets and make changes accordingly of all different kinds, and understand better what the impacts are of construction projects and things like that that have to happen. This technology is easily available. It was easily installed. It didn't cost much to install, but I think it is going to provide rich information for us to help us move people better in the downtown. We will be, in the case of King Street, especially sensitive to the impact on business, especially after giving the pilot project a fair chance. It's only been 2 weeks, but we will use public realm projects, joint promotional efforts, and other efforts that we have to undertake to make sure that the street remains vibrant and that more people are drawn to this area to experience this new way of thinking and to do business with the people that form such an important part of making that street special. But King Street, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of how we have to evolve as a city. We need to balance people's needs We need to balance people's needs both because there is a limited amount of public space that is now sought to be shared by more groups of people than might otherwise have been the case in previous times. Transit vehicles, cars, delivery trucks, bicycles, pedestrians, and on it goes. And we have to find ways to make sure that street space that was designed previously without that wide range of options in mind are shared in a balanced way between all of those different needs, and we have to make smart interventions wherever we can in order to do the most good. We cannot simply chain ourselves to the status quo and say no to any change, as some would have us do. This is, if you think about it for a moment, how does it fit? How does it fit to have one of the most rapidly growing cities in North America in an environment of rapid technological and other kinds of change, and just to say, no, we're going to leave things the way they are, or even suggest that you can turn back the hands of time? I don't think that's an honest way to deal with the people. I don't think it's an honest way to lead the city. And that is why I try to be upfront in talking about the changes that we make, but to make them in a balanced and responsible way so that we can move forward as a city. The city is growing. Change is upon us. We all know that. There wouldn't be a person in this room who isn't confronted by significant change in whatever a job that they happen to perform. And so I'm going to continue to face up to that change in an honest, balanced way going forward, because I think that's what the city needs in order to remain healthy. What I will not do is follow the lead of others who would cancel important investments and say no to everything and hold our city back. That is the wrong approach in 2017. In fact, it's the wrong approach any time to a growing, thriving, vibrant city with important challenges. I made reference earlier on to the disparity that exists between some people who are comfortable in the city and those who are struggling. And in order to help those people who are struggling, to help to lift them up, to give them a chance to show what they can do and to make a full contribution and to be fully able to support their own families, there are things that we have to do, like the Fair Pass, like investments in housing, like a number of the other things that I've mentioned today that are going to help them to be part of the rising tide that lifts all boats. We have seen before, say on transit, for an example, how damaging it is to just cancel bus routes. This destroys the connection that neighborhoods and people, individual people, have between themselves and opportunity. And some of the cases where those bus routes were canceled were some of the most isolated people and neighborhoods in the city who most needed that transit connection in order to get to a job or a retraining opportunity or get to school. Same with affordable housing, where by and large in recent years the goals set by the City Council itself were by and large ignored, when in fact that should have been a top priority, as it will be in this proposed budget, to make sure, as we're doing this year under the leadership of Deputy Mayor Anna Bailão and others at the whole City Council, we will exceed the modest targets set by the City Council a number of years ago for the first time. And at the same time as all of this, I reject the idea that taxes should be raised indiscriminately without any efforts to modernize our services and find better ways to do things. I will tell you that the proposed budget coming forward later this week, the staff proposed, because it's by and large put together by the city staff on advice from the budget chief and myself and others, but they do they carry the laboring oar on this. That budget sees operating spending increase by less than 1%. And this means that many of the investments, think about the list of investments I've been through in the past few minutes of things we're going to be able to do this year, that we're going to be able to do it because of efficiencies and savings achieved from existing budgets, while at the same time not increasing property taxes beyond the rate of inflation. So let me say that again. Despite inflation, despite increases in key areas that I've outlined today, and despite having to meet all of the needs that come with running the fourth largest city in North America, we have managed to keep the net operating budget spending of the city increasing at less than 1% this forthcoming year. I will, ladies and gentlemen, maintain my balanced approach. I will continue to work productively with the members of City Council. Think back to how things were at the City Council not too long ago. I will continue to work with the other governments, and I will focus on delivering on the investments that we're making, because it's fine to put them in the budget. It's another thing to deliver on these things, and I understand that challenge I have in front of me, from transit to modernized government services to affordable housing and to forward-looking projects like the Rail Deck Park. This is a great city. This is an admired city. You only have to travel, as many of you in this room do, for one reason or another, to understand how admired this city is. It's admired for its way of life, first and foremost, but it's admired in many other ways, and when people come to actually visit here, they admire it even more, not less. It deserves balanced, responsible, but also forward-looking government. Forward-looking government, looking at the change, looking at the growth, and responding accordingly. I believe the budget to be proposed later this week honors that mandate and overall helps to move us forward so that we can continue to be one of the most livable and admired cities in the world. That, I would respectfully suggest, is one of the key objectives that we all should share in common, to be one of the most livable and admired cities going forward. And I intend to use every ounce of effort I can to see that we achieve it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Amanda Galbraith, and I'm a director of the Canadian Club. As some of you know, I also had the privilege of being Mayor Tory's Director of Communications for the first half of his mandate. I've got to say, Mayor, it feels good to be up here. I'm enjoying being on the side of the podium as opposed to the back of the room, hoping you'd actually stick to the speech that I wrote for you. I'll also say for the record, this is not in the script the Canadian Club gave me either. I know I speak for many in the room when I say your remarks today sum up the balanced approach you're taking to the city's budget and, frankly, to every aspect of your administration. That means running a government that invests in key areas like transit, fighting traffic congestion, while also keeping our city affordable and taxes low. In my former role, I had the privilege of seeing the mayor's passion for the city firsthand. No one gets up earlier, I can tell you, so can his staff. No one goes to more meetings and community events, and no one, and I mean no one, is more committed to ensuring Toronto continues to thrive than this mayor. Mayor Tory, we see your passion and your approach to the city building every day, one that is guided by honesty and integrity, as you said today. We wish you continued success as you advance your plans for the city that we all love. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Before we conclude, let me extend another round of thanks to today's event sponsor, the Carpenters District Council of Ontario. We would also like to thank MediaEvents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. To learn more about the club, please visit us at CanadianClub.org. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your afternoon, and see you again soon.